All right, so we're going to get started. Looks like everyone can hear and see, and I have started the recording. And I'd like to welcome you to ATGenius, and wanted to just give you a little bit of background on who we are and how we came to be. So, about 5 or 6 years ago, my brother does coding, and I work. I've been working as a secondary school athletic trainer since the early '90s, and we teamed up and developed ATGenius. So we're relatively new on the scene, but we've been out about 5 or 6 years, and we've been really growing. So I just want to show you who we are here. I also do some adjunct teaching at a local university for athletic training students. I've been pretty active in the profession, serving once as the president of the Athletic Trainer Society in New Jersey. I was on the NATA secondary school committee for a while and done some other things. And Brandon, my brother, has been doing website coding for a number of years. He's developed hundreds of websites, literally, and has done some other things in the athletic training profession, including Eastern Athletic Trainers Association website, which is up on our neck of the woods from Maine down to Delaware, and NATA District 2 and things like that. So I'm going to get into how to create injury records and SOAP notes as our first part here. I have so many windows open with the chat and everything else, it's hard to navigate at the moment. Give me a second. So when you log in, I'm going to log into our test account, which has fake patients. You can have your device save your login, so you don't have to enter this every single time. I will tell you though, if you create an account for a student athlete and you create a password for them and an email in their profile and it asks you to save password, make sure you say no, because it will replace your saved password with theirs. If you have access to multiple schools, you'll have a box that comes up that allows you to select who you want to work with that day, and then you'll have this change schools here up on the left to change on the fly to switch accounts if you have multiple schools. So when you log in, the first thing you're going to see are some alerts. So if you do a SOAP note and forget to sign it and 7 days goes by, it will remind you that you need to sign a SOAP note. If you have an athlete that is not discharged and that record or case is still open and you haven't touched that record for a week or longer, you'll get an alert that that record needs attention. And also our system can track equipment that is loaned out, such as crutches or coolers, knee immobilizers, things like that. So if you have equipment that is not returned, you'll have an alert for that as well. The system is going to show the recent history of the last 10 records that you've been involved with on the system, and then it'll have this green discharged if they've been cleared to play, the orange tension if you haven't looked at that record in a week or longer, the red not discharged if that case is still open and that person has not been cleared or discharged from your care. So we're going to go into entering the SOAP note format. So I'll just scroll in here just to show you what this looks like, and if anybody watches The Office, we have a few office characters here. So we're going to go into Michael Scott. And you can see here his individual record history. And we're going to add a new injury. Now this is assuming that you already have people in your system. I'll go over how to add people to your account. But Michael Scott's already in there. I clicked Add Injury, and you see this menu come up. We do have an area to document emergency care right here in the middle. Has a Glasgow Coma Scale. You can note the time that you called EMS. I'm just going to show you that very quickly. So the introductory information is the same regardless. So choosing the sport level, and field location. You can skip any of these fields initially. So if you're using this on the field and using this on your phone and you just want to get right into it, you can skip this information, but I recommend that you go back later and enter it, because if you want to run reports later of how many football injuries you have or how many injuries you had on a certain field, you'll need this information. But the only thing that's required is the date. So we're going to click next here after I enter the date. And again, this is an emergency situation, so it's going to have an incident description. You can indicate how the patient is presenting, alert and oriented or unresponsive, when the EMS was notified, their vital signs, other diagnostic things like capillary refill or pulse oximetry, and the Glasgow Coma Scale, and then your care provided. So that's available for documenting emergency care. But for Michael Scott, let's go back and just say he's got a foot and ankle injury. You have 3 choices for the SOAP note. And of course, if you have any questions as we go along here, feel free to put something down in the chat or chime in and speak. I'll pause after each main section to give you time to ask some questions as well. So you have the guided SOAP, the open SOAP, and sure depend on your situation or your style of documenting. And I do know that Encore does prefer that you do the guided SOAP. I'm going to show you all 3 options though, because there may be situations where you choose the others. So the guided SOAP we're going to go into, and again, the same introductory information here where we can choose the sport, choose the sport level. Again, this can be skipped, but we recommend that you do put it in so reports are accurate. So I entered all that information, and then I'm going to put the date and time of injury to say it's 3 p.m. Then I hit next. And you'll come into this SOAP format. So you'll have these 4 tabs here for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. Let's just say it's his right ankle and his pain is a 5 out of 10. And you're going to just put the history here. I'm just going to put something brief. Inverted ankle. Then I click the objective tab. And let's say he's tender over the anterior talofibular ligament. So I'll put point tender, ATFL, but you can describe anything you want here for your palpation. And then if you have any swelling, or maybe they have some mild limping, you can note those things. So the one thing about the guided SOAP is that's going to have a lot of check boxes. The open SOAP is more geared towards typing narrative descriptions, but the guided SOAP is more checkbox oriented. You have all this information you can enter with range of motion. So if their dorsiflexion is painful, limited, and perhaps maybe they can only do 5 degrees of dorsiflexion actively. So you can note anything along here with the range of motion for active and passive. Then the area here, so let's say their dorsiflexion is 3 out of 5, their plantar flexion is 4 out of 5, and it's painful. There's always boxes for additional comments that you can record. And then the neurological and circulation. So we'll just say their dermatomes and myotomes and distal capillary refill are normal. And then your special tests. So we'll say, in this case, we have a positive anterior drawer test. We have a negative Kliger's test. We have a negative percussion test. And we'll say we have a negative Taylor tilt test here. All right. So there's a little arrow in the bottom right to quickly go back up to the top. All right. So again, we're in the objective section, which is the longer section. Next, we click on assessment. So let's just say in this case, we're going to call this a grade 1 ATFL sprain or a lateral ankle sprain. You can put your medical jargon here in the assessment box, but you want to select a lay-friendly term to describe the injury from this drop-down, such as ligament sprain, for any reports that you run. So for example, if you run a coach's report or an injury statistics report that is meant for lay persons to read, it's going to pull the information that you select in this drop-down, such as ligament sprain, instead of your jargon here. So on a coach's report, it'll say ligament sprain, not grade 1 ATFL sprain, or whatever you type in the box here. This drop-down here is customizable in your account. We realized the other day we didn't have tooth fracture in here, for example. So if there's something that we missed that you come across, you can customize that in account, which we'll cover a little bit later. Next, we go to plan. And this is where you can outline what your plan is. So let's say we're going to do some cryotherapy. Maybe you provided some tape, electric stim or modalities or things like that, or even crutches. You can indicate your treatment plan there. Then you can go down to participation status. So let's just say this person is not on crutches. They're just a minor ankle sprain and they're a limited participation status. And this part here is important for all of you in terms of documenting your physician referral. So in this case, maybe it's a minor ankle sprain, you won't be referring that, but if it was the case in which you are referring the athlete to a physician or for physical therapy, you would select yes here. You would choose your healthcare provider, and this drop down again is customizable in your account section. So you can add these names in later. We'll say Dr. Davis is seeing Michael Scott, and maybe you got an x-ray and then the referral date and no for surgery, and then any treatment service or additional comments you can put here in this physician referral. If you decide initially that you're not referring an athlete and then maybe 3 or 4 days later they're not getting better like you expected and you need to do a delayed referral, you can do that later. I'll show you how to do that. Next section here is your communication. So if you notified the coach, notified the parent, guardian in person or over the phone, you can document that, or if you provided any educational material about ankle sprains. These areas down here, you may choose to use or not, but in some states, it's required to indicate the estimated return to sport, estimated or expected treatment frequency and duration. For example, in New Jersey, we need to do all of this for our records. This is in our rules and regs. And we also have to, so you can put this here. It's easy enough to do with the check boxes. And then if you want to put a quick measurable goal, it's picking up to 5 from the pain level, from the subjective area. So let's say we want to try to decrease their pain from 5 to 2 by next week. That would be a measurable goal that you could enter there. All right, I'm just scrolling back to the top. I'm going to click Save. By the way, if you need to walk away from your device and you're in the middle of doing a SOAP note, make sure you hit Save. Because of HIPAA and security, if you let your system sit idle for a few minutes, it will log you out automatically. And that's for security, so no one walks by and can read things as you leave your device. So make sure you hit Save if you're going to get interrupted. Now that I hit Save, I can still edit this record. I can still delete this record. Once we sign and lock it on the right here with the green box, that makes the record permanent. And ultimately, you want to make it permanent. I get this question a lot of when should we sign and lock it? Well, if you're pretty set on your diagnosis and you're confident in your diagnosis at that time, go ahead and sign and lock it right away. If you're doing a wait and see, let's see how this ankle is tomorrow, let's see if any swelling develops or difficulty walking or things like that, I do that and then maybe I'll sign and lock it the next day. But once you lock it, additional records or additional features do become available. I'm going to ask too, if you could check if you're muted, that way we can minimize any background noise, please. I'm going to click Sign and Lock, and then you would just enter your password here. But I'm not going to sign and lock this record. I'm going to go back to Main Menu, just to show you Mike Scott. When I click on his file here, you can see the X and the unlocked icon here. That's the record we just created, so I can delete that. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. But once it's signed and locked, you can't do that. This emergency care is also unsigned, so I'm going to delete that. So let's go to an older record for Michael Scott. This knee injury here. Once you sign and lock a record, this More tab will appear. And this is important because this gives you a lot of additional features, but it's not available until you sign and lock the record. So you click the More tab, and on the left are all the additional things that you can add to this record. I want to spend a minute on patient questionnaire. In our profession, we're encouraged now to do patient-reported outcome measures. And we have several of these available throughout the system. You can send this to an athlete by text message. It's a one-way communication. It does not reveal your cell phone number. They cannot reply back to it other than to fill out the patient questionnaire. You can have them completed on your device, but with COVID, I understand we're not really into sharing devices, so that's why we have the ability to send it to the patient. So you can send a text message this way. But I'm just going to click Complete Questionnaire to show you what it looks like. So it's going to ask the athlete different questions about their functional ability and activities of daily living, things from sitting in class to getting in and out of a car to walking on uneven or even ground, stepping on or off a curb, running, pivoting, jumping. And this is all scored on a scale up to 100%. And you can repeat this to show your patient's improvement over time, or get an idea of really how they're doing. Sometimes when we have conversations with athletes, 2 or 3 minutes, we may not uncover information. For example, one time I didn't realize an athlete was still dealing with ankle stiffness 2 or 3 weeks out after a sprain until I had them fill out this questionnaire, and then we were able to address that. The athlete also indicates their return to play readiness, self-rated, which is always interesting to see what they have to say about that. Their pain level, any changes since the last visit, their progress and activity level, and the highest activity level that they feel that they can do at this time. So again, that is a patient-reported outcome measure. It's called Patient Questionnaire in our system, and it's available for several body areas, including the knee, the ankle, the back, the hip, shoulder. You can add a progress note to the record. You can see here that we already have one done, where his pain level was 2 out of 10 today, began the bike, was doing some light rehab, and then who added the progress note. And you can email this by clicking on this little envelope down here in the lower right. You can have an address book where you can put all your coaches' emails in ahead of time. And this is a secure email system, but it's going to have their information here and your signature and license number and any other information you want down there at the bottom with your credentials. That's the case for all reports that are emailed. Once an athlete is discharged and cleared from care, you can do a discharge note. Here one has already been done. And I'm going to click on discharge note. In some states, you need to put a reason for discharge. So we have the most common reasons here, including past functional test or pain reduced. And remember, once we discharge someone, that turns them from the red to the green. If you have that situation where you decide later, after you signed and locked the record, to refer the athlete for further care, you can do that here. I click the More tab, Physician Referral, and then we're doing the same thing. We're selecting the healthcare provider and imaging and things like that to document that referral. And there are referral reports that are available. A lot of our ideas come from users like yourselves who are working in the high school and say, hey, can you make it do this or that? And one of them is the follow-up. So if you have a follow-up conversation with a parent, with a PT, with a physician, and you feel that's important to document, you can do that here with a follow-up note. So if you spoke to the mother, the father, the coach, or other healthcare providers about the athlete's condition, you can document that you had that conversation here. That is, again, More tab, follow-up. I realize sometimes some of you are doing treatments in school and some are not, but we do have a treatment sign-in procedure for athletes that they can sign in on their phone. But if someone forgets to sign in, you can add them manually here by adding treatment. But if you're doing treatment sign-in, I would encourage you to use our system so they can do that themselves to make it easier on you. You can print reports, you can email reports. The watch pile idea is, let's say you see someone with lower leg shin pain. You're not sure if a stress fracture is brewing there. You're going to call it medial tibial stress syndrome today, but you want to remind yourself to check on that athlete maybe a week later to make sure no stress fracture is developing. You can add them to your watch pile, and then a week later an alert will come up reminding you to check on that athlete. And I tend to do that with shin pain in particular because I've had a number of athletes who kind of disappeared on me and ended up with a stress fracture, and it reminds me to keep an eye on them. You can add view media here. This is for attaching doctor's notes and things like that. At my high school, we're completely paperless. When we get a doctor's note, we scan it into our computer, we upload it into ATGenius, and then we shred it. We put it in the shred pile. We have special education students, job coaching students, that we call them at our school, that come into our room and do various jobs such as restocking taping shelves or folding towels and things like that. And one of their jobs is to take the shred pile once a week. So we do no paper filing anymore. If for some reason you need to unlock a record, we really discourage this. There's a lot of liability for us for unlocking records in the worst case scenario that someone was trying to hide something. But we understand the spirit of some of the requests for unlocking records are to make a change in diagnosis or things like that. But we have to be careful as ATGenius not to just arbitrarily unlock records and make people go in and change things that have already been signed. So we encourage you to use these additional notes, such as progress notes and things like that, to update a patient's file. But in the case in which you really need to unlock a record, there is this request here, but we ask that you do support it with an explanation and any supporting documents, such as a physician note, that we can justify unlocking the record and letting you go back in there. I have a few more things to say about SOAP notes, and then I'll just take a quick break for questions. So we're going to go down to Jim Halpert. We're going to add a new injury. Just to show you what else is available. If we click on the knee, there is the open SOAP. Same introductory information. We can skip all that. I'm just going to click next. So the SOAP note is a little different here. The subjective section is the same. But when you get to objective, you'll notice it's just a box to type. All right, so here's where you would type positive, negative Lockman's, positive valgus stress test, point tender over the MCL, point tender over the deltoid ligament, things like that. So some people prefer to do a more narrative description. The assessment tab is basically the same. Don't forget to select your drop down here to label it for coaches' reports. And your plan section for your open SOAP is similar but a little shorter. Not as many checkboxes. You would just type your plan up. Again, it's more narrative based. Participation status. There still is the physician referral option here. All right, so if you're referring the athlete, you still have that section here. All right, but you don't have as many checkboxes and things to complete as the guided SOAP. And finally, there is the short note. The example I typically use for this is something that's minor that you want to document, but it's not quite worth getting into a SOAP note about. Let's say you have someone that has a lower leg lesion. You want to write it up, but you don't really think it deserves a full SOAP. I'm just clicking the date of injury here. And this is just a one-pager, so it's a short note, just as it says, so you can have a space to type what you think the injury is, your diagnosis, the involved side. Again, the drop-down for coaches' reports is here, the participation status, and then any communication that you did. And again, that's the short note, and I would recommend that for just more minor situations. Okay, so that's it for SOAP notes. And it's funny, we have a saying with ATGenius, we have evolved so much. with different things, but it all started with a soap note and just making that available, and then we grew from there. But let me ask you if you have any questions so far in the soap note section or anything I've talked about so far before we move on to concussions. Okay, doesn't look like I see any questions in the chat. I'm going to talk about concussions, so I just want to get, if a few of you don't mind just chiming in and speaking, what are you using for concussions right now in terms of documenting the initial injury, symptom checklists, return to play documentation? Can you just give me an idea of what some of you are doing with that? Anyone, please?
Casey, this is Brandon Shepard. Erica may be away. I'm going to let her speak about that. Us in Birmingham, we're using your system completely. So I think, though, most people have been using the SCAT for concussion evaluation and a symptom checklist. If any of you guys in Tuscaloosa would like to chime in, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so this is Erica. We've been using SCAT test, and Encore has kind of standardized our forms a little bit more. And so we're doing a return to play checklist. Yes, we would really like to do it on this. My first question, and I know you're going to address it, is can we send the symptom check to their phones like the injury check?
Yes, you can. And, that was, again, another idea provided by one of our high school subscribers out there, and we thought it was a really great idea. And actually came up before COVID. So, normally in the past, I would have an iPad at my school, and I would open up symptom checklists and hand the iPad to the student, and they would use my iPad to fill it out. That was pre-COVID, of course. And now this idea of being able to send the symptom checklist to their phone is even more important than ever. So if you're using the SCAT, that's good. We have a SCAT-like document in here. You can't take SCAT exactly as is because it's proprietary and just put it in a product. So our system is SCAT-like, but it's not exactly SCAT, but it's going to have everything that you need and more. You'll probably have certain sections that you choose not to use, but we just have everything available in here for you. So I'm going to go to this athlete here. I'm concussed. So we're going to add a new injury here. I'm clicking concussion evaluation. And we call it concussion evaluation because it doesn't lock you into calling it a concussion. We understand that not all head traumas are concussions. Sometimes they're just contusions. So you have three choices here. You can use our concussion evaluation in the system, which is SCAT-like. If you do a paper SCAT, you can upload the paper SCAT into the system. You'd have to scan it and then upload it. And then the upload doctor's note is for the situation where if you have someone that's concussed on a Friday night at an away game and they see a doctor over the weekend and maybe 2 or 3 days go by before you see the athlete and then they show up with a piece of paper that says they're concussed, please file return to play protocol. Many athletic trainers won't do a SCAT at that point so far out. So you could just upload the doctor's note to get moving through the system. So you need to pick one of these three things to move forward from this screen. So I'm going to click our concussion evaluation. Again, remember the opening screen is always the same, regardless of the injury. I'm going to skip the sport and sport level just for time's sake. Again, this is another idea provided by our high school users out there, just to have this little diagram of where they were hitting the head. You can spin it left or right to show the other side. So we're going to open up to a SOAP-like format here, where we have a history tab, signs and symptoms, exam, assessment, and plan. So we can see the history section here. If they have a learning disability, they have a history of migraines. You can indicate their injury mechanism, medications, prior concussions, and any other relevant patient history in these areas here that you can just type. The signs and symptoms, for example, if they are answering questions slowly or they have a vacant stare, you can check those off. And the symptoms are probably what you're used to scoring these 0 to 6. So I'm just going to check off a few. So blurry vision, dizziness, feeling foggy, groggy, headache, etc. So this is your signs and symptoms section or tab. And your exam tab is very lengthy. You might find that you only use certain parts of this. This is what I do. I don't use all of this personally, but we make it available depending on your preferences. So if you're going to go through the questions of which day of the week it is, who you're playing today, those types of questions here. The 5-word recall, 3 trials. You can check through these. And remember, this works on your phone or any device. All the balance tests. So if they're doing the non-dominant, for example, single leg balance test with their eyes closed, and they got 2 errors, maybe they got 3 errors on the tandem balance. There's a little timer here if you need it. And then all the concentration questions. The months backwards. You can put your errors, corrected errors, uncorrected errors for months backwards. You can time them if you want. You can do the numbers backwards here. I find a lot of unconcussed athletes can't get too far into this. But you know, I know this is standard on what we're doing for concussion evaluation at this time. Cranial nerve assessment. Some people prefer to have that in here. Again, this section may not be for you. Nothing's required. There's a VOM section, so you can do the smooth eye pursuits and note any symptoms with any of these movements, saccades and so forth. There's a brief area for documenting the neck examination. And then your delayed word recall here. And remember, this little arrow down at the bottom right can bring it back to the top quickly. We're going to decide this is indeed a concussion. Select concussion from the drop down. And then your plan. So we're going to say this athlete needs to follow return to play protocol. They're out. And then physician referral. We see Dr. Williams. And then you can indicate any relevant information here under physician referral. And then with communication. I know at our school we notify everybody with a concussion. We notify the nurse. We notify guidance. The athletic director wants to know. Even the athletic secretary keeps track of concussions. That way, if someone's concussed at the end of football season, doesn't show up for the return to play, and then goes out for wrestling, they're on a list that they're not eligible for wrestling. So we've used that system in case someone doesn't finish the return to play protocol and is trying to go out for another sport in the future. Anyway, we can notify who we spoke with here in communicating. Same idea, we hit save, and then you're ultimately going to sign and lock this record. I'm going to go back to an older concussion. I'm going to pick my daughter here, Miranda Kardashian. I always say on here, Miranda likes to watch the Kardashians. That's why I named her Miranda Kardashian here. So let's go to Miranda Kardashian here and see her concussion history. I'm going to go pick an older one from April because I think this one has some data in it. Remember, once you sign and lock the concussion record, just like a SOAP note, the more tabs available, and you have all these options here. Getting back to the one question with the symptom checklist, this is how you would do repeated symptom checklists. So I'm going to click that here. This is going to have all of Miranda's symptom checklists over time. So you can see here that it's a red check if they have the symptom, a green check if they did not report the symptom, and then a 0 through 6 for scoring. And you could email this specifically by going down to the bottom right, as with most of our reports here, just to show you this real quick. This is going to have all of her symptoms and dates and so forth. And then down at the bottom, well, there's a lot of data in this one, sorry. Way at the bottom is your signature and license and so forth down there in your credentials. But I'm going to go back up to the top, and this is where you can send this to your patient to complete by phone. All right, so we have Miranda Kardash, her phone number, and then this will go to her cell phone and then appear in here with all the other records. If you're handing a device, if you ever get to the point where you're handing a device off to someone to do in your facility, this is basically what it would look like, whether it goes to their phone or not, where they just check off their various symptoms here, and then it automatically gets stored. A lot of the choices here on the left are similar to a SOAP note, except we have a section if you want to do a separate cranial nerves evaluation. Many times in my school, when we're clearing someone for their final return to play, they've done everything. A lot of times we'll go through a cranial nerves assessment as like a final check and document that as well. But if you're looking here now on the left, the return to play protocol, I want to show you. This is how you document your steps for step 1, no activity, 24 hours asymptomatic. Step 2, maybe you start them on the bike. Step 3, some running and agilities and things like that. So this is the return to play protocol. And one of the things to keep in mind is that you have to sign and lock each individual concussion step. The reason for that is that there's so much liability with concussions and athletic trainers and documenting that we feel that's very important that you sign and lock each individual step, that you're verifying that it was done and that they were symptom-free at that time. So you may get an alert that you have records that are unsigned, and you look at all your SOAP notes and you're saying they're all signed and not figure it out, and it's probably a concussion step. So if you were adding a step, let's just say today Miranda was on her non-contact practice step. We'll say step 4 here, choose activity. This list here is customizable. So if you're doing different things for your return to play procedure, you can modify this list in your account settings. But I want to select non-contact practice for her. And let's just say she had no symptoms. I can save this for later. And the reason we have this is because let's say it's 2:45 in the afternoon and you're sending this athlete off for non-contact practice, and you tell Miranda to come back after practice to verify with you that she was symptom-free. You can save it for later. She comes back, she's symptom-free, then you can sign and lock it. All right, but I'm just going to hit save for later here. Now this return to play protocol is kind of messy because we use it in a test account. Naturally, you're not going to have all these because there's a lot of repeats. But you can notice that's still unlocked here, the one I just did here at the bottom. The rest of the More tab is similar to what I went over with the SOAP notes. And there is a little scroll here for the More selections here in case there could be something hidden depending on what device you're on. I'm going to pause there. That is concussions. Is there any questions at this point before I go over treatment sign-in? All right, I'm going to ask for another volunteer. In terms of treatment sign-in, can you give me an idea of what you're doing? Are you doing any documenting of any treatments other than your initial evaluation? I realize that schools may vary in the level of treatments that they're doing. Can somebody give me an example? Because I don't want to spend too much time on something unnecessarily, but I just want to get an idea of what you're doing now for treatment sign-in. Okay, Brandon, I see your comment. So if someone comes in for ice or a little stretch or taping, would they be documenting that as a treatment? Okay, do you want me to go over treatment sign-in? Okay, I see a few things on the chat that there's some daily logs. Okay, hit it briefly. Okay. All right, so I just want to scroll back up to a couple of questions I see in the chat. Are there options besides email to send to our team physician? At this time, you could print it out or email it. Those are only, wait, hold on, I'm thinking. You can send reports to coaches via text. So if you add a physician in that section, which I can show you, you can send reports by email or by text to coaches, and you can include a physician in that list, if that answers your question. So email or text. And yes, you can print any report too. All right, I see Brandon suggested to hit it briefly with the treatment sign-in. I see someone does daily log for ice bags and taping. And then I see a question, if we do a paper scat on the field, how do we document that in the system online? So if you do a paper scat, you want to scan that. And I use an app called Scannable that works very well. Just scan that and it turns it into a PDF. And then you could upload that into the system. So I would use some type of scanning app to scan your paper scat. And then when you get into the record, I'm going to click Add Injury. Now, the scan document is sitting on my computer. I click Upload I'm in the wrong spot. I click Upload Completed Scat. You're going to still do this introductory information here. Note that the sport required. So anything, whenever you see red around a field, that is required. And then you just click Upload Scat here. Anyone that has any other questions, please just throw it on the chat there and I'll get to it. I'm going to go to account options. So in this area here, this is where you would add your credentials or any license number, anything like that that you want to appear with reports that you send. This is where you can change your password. If you deal with middle school kids, you want to make sure you check off that, because that way the middle school grades will appear from the drop down when you select a grade level. And you want to make sure that you select a grade level, because the system is automatically going to archive graduates. So you want to make sure you select a grade level. I'm going to click Account Options. These are all the areas that you can customize your system, and you want to spend some time in advance to set this all up. I'm going to go down to the bottom first for treatment sign-in. So if you're using treatment sign-in to document some things, this is where you can customize it. If you click download QR code here, this is something that you want to hang up on your wall so that the athlete can hold their cell phone camera up to it, and this will take them right to the sign-in page. And this works very well in the high school setting. So that is under Account Options, download QR code. If you need to add a treatment or modify the list, this is where you could add any treatments that are not in there, or you can delete any treatments that you're not using. So if I go to treatment sign in here, any of these here, so for example, I'm going to just go down. If you're not doing cupping, all right, you can get rid of cupping that is in there, and there's dollar values too in there. So you can get rid of cupping or change it or make things customizable to whatever you're doing. So I'm going to go to a fresh page. ATGenius.com, and I'm clicking treatment sign in here. Now, pre-COVID, this is how I would do it at my high school. I would have an iPad mounted on the wall with this page open so the athletes would come in, all use the same iPad, and sign in. However, now with COVID, we use the QR code. So when they scan the QR code, this is where it will take them. You need to set a treatment code. So whatever your mascot is usually what most people pick. So this test account is Bulldogs. I'm going to use my son, Tyler Smith. So again, I'm the athlete signing in. I'm going to enter the school code, my last name, date of birth. Now, if you have twins or triplets, there is a special way you need to add those in. So if you have any of those situations, you may need our assistance in adding them in. But again, I'm the athlete signing in. Bulldog Smith, date of birth. And now I'm going to choose my sport. I'm a baseball player. I'm going to choose the body area that I'm in for. So this is what treatment sign-in looks like. They can click repeat treatments from last time. So if they're getting the same thing every single day, they can just click repeat and get in and out. You can put items in your quick list at the top. So any common things that you're doing, you can put right here at the top so they don't have to do much scrolling. You'll notice here the red headings, injury evaluation, tape and wrap, etc. You cannot change the red headings, but you can change anything within the red headings, customizable in your account settings. So there's these different areas here. So you may not be using all of this, but you can customize that as you wish in those settings. So I'm Tyler Smith. I came in for ankle taping. I came in and maybe I got some ice, and maybe I also needed some wound care and maybe some stretching. All right. So I check off a few things here as the athlete. I sign in and I'm done as the athlete. If I go back to the athletic trainer who's logged in, back to main menu, I click treatment sign in, I see his sign in. So you can imagine this as a clipboard where there'll be a running list of everyone who has signed in, and you ultimately want to approve them. If you needed to edit them, you click on here, you can go in and add something else that they skipped. But ultimately you want to approve them. If there was a list of 10 or 15 treatment sign-ins here, I hit select all. I approve selected, and that wipes that clipboard clean. And if I go back to Tyler Smith's record, I click treatment history, I will see all of his sign-ins. So he has a total of 48 patient visits and 147 treatments, because if you do 3 treatments for 1 visit, that's why those numbers are different. So when I approved his treatment, it took it away from the clipboard and put it in his individual file. And these are all date and time stamped. I see a question, can we do baseline scats in the system for team-wide or be able to compare baseline scat to post-injury scats in the system? I'm going to have to, I'm going to copy this question and talk to our coder about that. So just give me a minute. I'm going to copy and paste this question into my notes to ask later. I'm sorry I don't have an answer to that. We are not set up for baseline scats right now in the system. It's more geared towards evaluation once an injury occurs. Okay, so do we have any other questions before I move on to the next section? Some of these areas I'm about to show you are additional features of the system. I'm going to go to Jules Granger. You can send text messages, if that's something that your organization is okay with, from the system to an athlete. Again, it's only one-way communication. So I'm in Jules Granger's file. I click Add Message. Just used this last night with an athlete. So an athlete came in with a knee injury, and we did some treatment, and we sent up a text message to be received 7 p.m. last night. Reminder, ice your knee for 20 minutes and see me tomorrow at 3 p.m. So you can do that here. You can choose the time that it goes, send now or send later, and then your message down there at the bottom. And it will just say the name of your school. I work at Eastern High School, so it will say at the bottom, Eastern High School Athletic Trainers. It's not revealing my cell phone number, and they cannot reply to it. So that is a message feature. The other thing you can do is they can receive a message upon treatment sign-in as well. I'm going to go up to equipment loan. I'm not sure how many get involved in loaning out equipment that you want to get back, but just to let you know, if you're loaning out crutches or a knee immobilizer or something like that that you want to get back, this is where you can track that here. So any things that you're lending out, you can customize the list here and keep track of what equipment is owed back to you. I'm going to go to reports. Brandon, I had a question from the other day. Would they be running their own physician referral reports, or is that for the regional manager to do? Okay. So in the report section here, if you want to send a coach's report, this is where you would select your sport. I'm going to leave it on all sports. And then pick a date range. Okay, I see Brandon commented, ATs can run their own reports, but mostly for regional managers. And I do encourage athletic trainers to do their own coach's report each week. Okay, so if you're going to do a weekly coach's report, this is something that you can use here. So we're going to just pick a date range. I'm going to back this up a little bit just to grab some data. So your coach's report will look like this. And some of this, understandably, is incomplete because our test account is not always in the best shape. But the drop down that you selected that I pointed out is here. So if you forgot to do one, you can do it on the fly here. You can change their status on the fly. If they're getting treatment or they're not showing up or they are showing up, you can indicate their treatment status here. And one of the features we have here, let's say Jim Halpert has not been compliant, so haven't seen him in 2 weeks. You evaluated him and he hasn't shown back up. You don't know his status, haven't had any real contact. You want to point that out to the coach so it stands out. You can highlight a person. So anytime you do any changes to the coach's report, make sure that you click update at the bottom before you send it. And you'll notice there that that's going to be highlighted for the coach. So you can fix their status, fix their injury type, Any other comments you want to put here? And then I'm going to go down to the bottom. And also, if there's someone missing from your list, maybe they got hurt before the date range you selected, and they're not in this, but you want them to be, you can add them and go find them. The other thing is that all of these are links back to their file. So if you see a name you don't recognize, like who the heck's Mike Scott, you click on their name and you can look back and see who they are or what their deal was, their injury. So we're going to send this report. This is where you want to, again, spend some time to set up your address book in advance. This report can be texted or emailed. And this is what the report's going to look like. So it's going to be filled in more nicely for you, but it's a nice sharp report with nice columns. You can see you have the highlighted area here. And then, of course, with everything else down at the bottom, your credentials, your signature, etc. I'm going to go back to reports. You can run injury statistics reports to see how many injuries that you've seen. So this is going to produce a pie chart of how many injuries that you've seen. Again, I'm just going to pick a date range back from December, and we might pick up a few injuries here. So this is going to produce this only has 4 baseball injuries, but this is not really demonstrating the pie chart that well, but it's going to have it by body part, by injury type, by sport, and this is for all of your injury evaluations that you've done. I'm going to go down to physician referral report. I don't think we have a whole lot of referrals in here, but I'm going to backdate it a little bit to grab a few. So this is physician referral report. All right, so you have your options here. I'm just going to leave it on all options, all providers, all athletic trainers in this case. So your physician referral report is going to show the patient name, their date of birth, the healthcare provider or physical therapy clinic they were referred to, the referral date, injury date, their injured area, any imaging that was done, surgery, treatment service, etc. And then down there at the bottom, it's going to show your percentage, the number of referrals out of the number of athletes that you evaluated, and a percentage. I see Brandon commented that he encourages the athletic trainers to run these physician referrals reports monthly to see what the report looks like. I'm going to go back to account and account options. If you want to, this is your address book here where you can add your coaches in there to receive emails. If you want to import all of your student athletes before the season, this is where you would do it. You would need an Excel or a CSV file. And you could upload those athletes in here. So if you click field list, these are all the fields or information that can be imported from a CSV file into the system. That's one way of doing it, of getting all athletes into the system ahead of time. At my school, we actually don't even do that. We have them add themselves on their phone as they walk in. So if we have a new injury, we show them how to create their own account, which I can go over with you. And that just buys me a few minutes. If I'm really busy and a new injury walks in, I'll say, sit down, go to ATGenius.com. I have a piece of paper I can hand them that explains how they create their own account, and that just buys me a few minutes if, like I said, I'm busy doing something else. But you can upload them in advance in the system or have them create their own account. Erica asked, does the report run everything you did that month or only the physician referrals? Only the physician referrals for that particular report. We are working on another report that is not done yet. Patient care summary here. This is actually requested out of a large group out of Cincinnati. hospital-based system asked for this. So this patient care summary is, again, I don't know how much data we're going to pull here. Let's see. This is not done yet. I just want to let you know, Erica. It's going to show the athlete, their injury date, and any treatments that they received during the time period that you specify. So if I specify a week's worth, just go. I don't know if there's anybody in this particular week, but let me just see. I picked longer than a week, but it's going to show their name, their injury date, and any treatments that they received during that time period, as long as they're not discharged from care. So even if their injury happened back in August, they're going to show up on this list if they're still getting treatment and any treatments that happened during that period. But again, we're not done that report yet. That's called a patient care summary report. I see a question about what happens if an athlete changes schools. You'll probably have to notify, we would ask the athletic trainer to notify the regional manager, and then we would transfer their record to the other school. This reminds me too, if you have any support requests or things like that as the athletic trainers, we ask that you submit them to your regional manager, and then your regional manager would submit that to you. But we've had that before where athletes change schools, and that's something we need to handle. Your ATGenius school code is where you set that treatment code up if you're using treatment sign-in. If you want to add coaches and staff to have some access to your information, you can do that. I'm not sure if you'll be doing this, but normally a lot of times this is done in colleges where coaches can have access to some athlete information, such as insurance information or things like that. Let's say a college athlete is on the road with an injury and goes to the hospital, and the coach accompanies them. The coach can access their injury or their insurance card, a copy of their insurance card, insurance information, things like that. So you may not be using that to this level, but if you want to add coaches to your system so they can see certain information, this is where you would do that here. The concussion drop down. So when you're doing your return to play, the choices for each concussion step, that's where you can edit these here. So this is an account options, and you can delete any of these or change them based on what you're doing at your facility. The system keeps track of any emailed reports. So one of the things we recommend is that you tell your IT department at your school to make sure ATGenius emails don't get treated as junk to staff. Sometimes that happens initially. So you may have to tell coaches initially to check their junk folder or train their email not to treat it as junk. But you can see any emailed reports that were sent from the system in this area here. The equipment loan manager section is here. This is where you would customize your list of choices of items that you're loaning out if you're using that section. You do want to spend a little bit of time, I think, putting in your field locations and things like that so you can customize that and make sure that your reports are accurate. Unfortunately, no, you do need web access to use the system. It is web-based. There was a question about handling something with when you're in a rural area with limited cell phone service. I would recommend, and I've had this situation come up before, where you would just type something up in your notes or something like that in your phone temporarily and document it later. But you do need the internet for it to work. The injury types, this is the drop down for laypersons, how we're labeling injuries. So this is where you can edit any of those. I'm not sure if anyone's using preseason documents, but I'm just going to talk about this quickly. If you are part of having parents sign off that they've read something before the season, or you're having athletes needing to upload their physical, or you need to post a physical form that is a fillable PDF for them to download, fill out, and re-upload, anything preseason wise that you may be involved with, this is an area where schools use this system to put any preseason documents up that can be electronically signed or uploaded, and it involves texting the parent to verify their signature and things like that. I don't know how many would be involved with this, but I just wanted to mention it's there and what this means. It's the preseason documents area. Referral providers, this is an area that you're going to want to go and check out. This is where you customize your drop-down list of referral providers here, and any your physical therapy. This came up last demo. This is where you would customize your drop-down list of physical therapy clinics for your referral selections. I realize that you guys aren't doing much rehab at school, but there's a rehab card that you can create for athletes to follow on their phone, but I'm not going to really spend any time on that. I just want to let you know that it's there and what it's there for. We also have reminder days here. This is defaulted at 7. You can change this. This is when you have that unsigned SOAP note. It's going to bug you after 7 days, reminder to sign it. Or if you have a record you haven't touched for a while, a week goes by, it's going to remind you. You can change this to 3 days, you can change it to 14 days, but it's set standard at 7 days for reminders. And the same thing for your watch pile, that will be a 7-day reminder. You can add your school logo to your email if you want. And then your sports and sport level here, you want to spend a little bit of time customizing this area as well. Team members are any additional people that would have access to your account. And this is mainly handled, in your case, through the regional managers. But if an athletic trainer had a sub or an assistant or somebody like that for a day or even longer than that works also at that school, this is how normally you would add those people so you all are looking at the same account. But just so you know, this is primarily handled in your case through the regional managers. So I would check with them before you add anyone to your system. Erica, I believe that is individually based. So entering physician or PT clinics for your ATs, I believe they have to do that individually in their own accounts. I will put that question down also, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah, we do ask that the individual athletic trainers do spend some time customizing things in their account options for their sports and sports level and field locations and things like that. If you're ever lost, just hit ATGenius and it'll take you back to the main menu. All right, Erica, I see your question. We review for our athletic trainers how to document something for a visiting school or another event that we discuss and having access to other schools. Okay, so let's say you have a visiting athlete. You're going to click New Patient. And you can do this too if someone walks into your room that's at your school and they're not in the system. You would just click New Patient. All right, so brand new injury, they're not in the system. You want to add them in. Only the red fields are required. You'd want to put their cell phone number in there if you're going to use the text messaging service. You want to make sure you choose a grade level, and this is where you need to make sure that if you're handling middle schools, that you check that off in your account settings so middle school grades appear here. You're going to enter their date of birth, that is required, any medical conditions, and if they're a twin or triplet, you need to handle checking that off here. Twins cannot add themselves to the record, to the system, so you have to add them if there's any twins by this method. And then if they're a visiting athlete, this is where you would check that off and then indicate their school. And this way that this visiting athlete doesn't appear on any coaches' reports or things that you're running specifically for your school. If you're working with multiple schools, when you log in, you'll have a choice of which school you're working with, and then you can change schools here. I see a question about an AHSAA event. I'm figuring that's a state event. So we're going to have the regional managers, as far as our last conversation was, our regional managers create either one big state event account that everyone has access to, or state event accounts per region. I think the last conversation we had was one big state event account, so that would be accessible to everyone if they work a state event. And Eric, if that doesn't answer your question, please let me know. Okay, Brandon did say all regional managers should create a school name AHSAA events for everyone. If you click on patient list, you can sort by non-discharge, discharge, unlock records. So if you're getting an alert that something's unlocked and you're not sure why, you can search it. You can search by sport. You can search by athletic trainer. You can search by watch pile. You can isolate your visiting athletes here. So that's under patient list. So if I go back, this menu up here, this patient list is there. Daily journal is another small area. This is more of a notebook approach. This is one of the suggestions by one of our members. This has injury information in it, but it's not designed for that. Okay, we just type some injury information in here. But I use this for documenting situations. The example I use is if you give a talk to the football team on proper tackling techniques and preventing neck injuries, or the importance of reporting concussions, and you want to document that you had that discussion, you can put that in here. If you notice a hole in the soccer field and you've told the school about it 3 times and they haven't fixed it, and you kind of want to cover yourself that, look, you took some action, you notified somebody, it's not getting fixed, somebody gets hurt, you want to document that, you can put that in here. I often tell the story here of 2005 when I was working a football scrimmage in August when an opposing player unfortunately suffered a C5 fracture. He came up and delivered a hit to our ball carrier's thigh and sustained an axial load and C5 fracture. We had to do CPR on the field. And he had a catastrophic injury, obviously, and unfortunately about a year later passed away from his injuries. But after that was a lot of the lawsuit things that came up, and one of the things that came up is what was done to prevent this injury. And they were looking at everything. And so that really was a lesson learned for me that if you're doing anything preventatively, it's good to document it. That way, in case something happens and they're asking what steps were done to prevent the injury, you can do that. If I speak to the wrestling team about preventing skin things, I'll put that in there in this daily journal. So it's really open to what you want to use it for other than injuries for documenting situations or things that you're doing. Yes, Brandon, regarding the state events, I wasn't sure where we left it, if individual regions would have their own state event or just one giant one for everybody. So the question is,
Hey, Brandon. Oh, Casey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just thought I'd jump in here. It's a little quiet now. So I want to make sure I do this correctly with each region. If they each region creates their own school, quote unquote, school named AHSAA events, can they do that?
Yeah.
So we can have schools with the same name in different regions?
You're meaning that the event, the state event account is named the same
Correct.
multiple times. All right.
Correct.
All right. Yeah, that's one of my notes too. Okay.
All right.
I'll check on that one.
Because I think Enoch had this issue in Coleman again, that he tried to enter it as AHSAA events. He couldn't do it, so he named it AHSAA coverage. And then if we get into that situation, then we're going to have every region is going to have this same account name something different.
Okay. Would it be an issue if the state event is named that and that region's name attached to it? Like if it,
I don't think it'll be I don't think it'll be a problem. No.
Like if it was AHSAA events Birmingham, and then another one was named with their region attached to it.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay.
Yes, that would work.
Okay. All right, I see a question. If I'm helping cover at another school, will their home AT be able to see a note that I write, since I will not be the one following up? Yeah, you would need access to that school. I see Brandon answered that question. All right, so that was the daily journal. And I wanted to go back to ATGenius.com, just the main site here. So if you have an athlete walk in and you want to direct them to create their own account, or this has sometimes been done, I don't know if this will be something you're interested in or not, but sometimes we have high school athletic trainers send an email out to the parents, create an account for your student athlete and here's how to do it. Or they can do this on the spot when they walk into your room. I've even had situations where athletic trainers met with individual teams and they all have their cell phones out and let's all create an account. It'll take 10 minutes. So the athlete, to create an account, will click student athletes here. All right, they would click new student athletes. This is where your school code, remember it's Bulldogs for this account, but you will have to set a school code here. And then next, they'll show your name. And they're going to enter their date of birth, their last name, and so forth, and create their account. They can also take their own headshot in there. If you want to use the headshots or not, that'll be something that you'll need to decide. I know most schools have athletes and parents sign off that they can, the pictures can be used for sports due to the nature of athletics and sports and pictures being taken, but sometimes schools, you need permission for any pictures to be taken or used. So I would be careful about that and check on that if you want to use the headshots. Or you don't have to use the headshots either. But I want to go back to Jules Granger and show you what we mean by the athlete portal. So if I'm the athlete creating my account, This is everything that I will see as an athlete in my athlete portal. So you can tell them which information you want filled out if you're telling them to create their own account. You can also view this. How I got to this, I'm going to go back to main menu. I went down to Jules Granger and I clicked on View Edit. And these are the tabs that are available. I mentioned before, a lot of colleges, you can upload a copy of the insurance card or put the parent information in here. We have some schools using our system for COVID screening, so this is where they would do all that. But this is again, the athlete portal view, and you can direct them which information you want filled out or not. Does anyone have any questions? I think that is just about everything I wanted to cover. Unless there was anything else, Brandon, that you wanted me to cover, we hope that you enjoy using the system. I just wanted to summarize by saying that this system was developed by someone who does your job every day. I've been working at a high school for a long time, and our approach with this system has been to make it as user-friendly and relatively simple as we can make it be for you. And I think once you get into the routine of using it and understand it, it will be pretty seamless for you. It's been harder and harder to keep things simple as we get more and more requests for it to do more things. Like I said before, it all started with a SOAP note, and we've evolved so much more beyond that now. But just keep in mind that is our mission, to keep it simple, and I hope you enjoy using the system.
Thanks, Casey. I think you're doing a good job doing that. And I can speak for our ATs in Birmingham to say that we really have enjoyed it. It's making our jobs very easy, but also very simple to use. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Okay, I am going to stop the recording.